Hello everybody, this is the disembodied voice of Chuck from Theater and Stream. I'm not on camera once again for my minisode because I'm still a bit of a sniveling, snotty mess after being afflicted with the spring crud. For this week's minisode, I was inspired by Matt's experience getting his first true taste of Star Trek The Next Generation, and by a recommendation from a friend of mine to revisit a particular show that I'll get into in a bit, that he rediscovered, trawling on Tubi. And I've decided to go back and look at some of the redheaded stepchildren, that were born from the successes of Star Trek The Next Generation. Now, everyone knows the most prominent belligerents from the network wars fought over 90s sci-fi supremacy. Shows like Babylon 5, Stargate SG-1, Farscape, and even more procedural fare like The X-Files or Quantum Leap and Sliders. But there were many, many more that either never got a chance to catch on because, clueless executives were showing them out of order or were preempting them for, basketball. And that really hampered their ability to succeed. And they only really ever got exposed to larger audiences after they were canceled or syndicated or, discovered on DVD many years later. The first one that I'm going to get into, comes to us from Farscape creator Rockne S. O'Bannon and the legendary, Steven Spielberg, and that being Sequest DSV, which, basically is just Star Trek underwater by way of James Cameron. Set in the faraway year of 2018, Sequest is probably the one most people have some passing awareness of, especially from its time in syndication post-cancellation. In this universe, mankind has depleted the surface world and, has to therefore send the bulk of humanity to the coasts or to undersea colonies on the ocean floor to survive, with various factions vying for control over territory and ever more valuable natural resources. This was a series whose initial promise was hampered by network TV constraints and a season-to-season reset button that kept the tone, subject matter, and most critically, the cast in a constant flux. If there's one thing people remember about this show, it's got to be the talking dolphin Darwin, because he was pretty much the only consistent thing they had going, because he was a puppet, believe it or not. It's a very convincing bit of puppetry, because I think most people at the time believed that that dolphin was real. The heart and soul of each season, however, is the man in the captain's chair, beginning first with Roy Scheider in the first two seasons, and eventually Michael Ironside in the final Dead in the Water third season that accelerated the timeline 10 years into the future, to like 2032, I believe. My friend Bill rewatched this himself recently, and he called out how bizarre the premises of the episodes could be, even without the undersea aliens showing up. The episode where a character basically falls in love with his young, hot, cryogenically frozen mother is especially questionable, but that just speaks to how weird and wide open storytelling could be on 90s television, even compared to today. For a series kept afloat by the teen beat crowd's adulation for the dreamy cover boy Jonathan Brandis, may he rest in peace, there wasn't enough continuity amongst its cast for the writers, actors, and even its audience to really invest in the proceedings. Your mileage may vary episode to episode and season to season, but this show is well worth a revisit or a casual binge session. You can find Sequest DSV on Peacock, amongst many other platforms. Next up is Space Above and Beyond, and one can't help but think that this show was on the air well before its time and gone far too soon. Created by a pair of writers responsible for some of the most memorable episodes of the early years of the X-Files and even later on with Millennium, Glenn Morgan and James Wong. Above and Beyond channels sci-fi classics like Starship Troopers and even Enemy Mine. It laid the blueprint for the eventual reboot of Battlestar Galactica and laid the path, arguably, for even the modern Halo streaming series we get to enjoy today, with episodes chock full of cutting-edge for the time special and practical effects, which complement the compelling universe and the chemistry of the characters. If only Halo had more of that going on. The universe concocted by Morgan and Wong is incredibly fleshed out for a show that only lasted a single season, complete with a race of rebelling androids called silicates, cannon fodder test tube babies called in vitros that the humans use to swell their numbers, and a race of religious zealot aliens known as the Chigs. There's a lot going on, but it makes each episode and every character's backstory far richer than the brief 20-odd episodes should be able to. The wildcards, who are the principal squadron of, pilots come, ground force grunts that we follow, gives a best of both worlds as far as the variety of their action sequences is concerned, because it drives every episode. Either they're flying around getting in dogfights, or they're on the surface having gunfights. It's very, very fun. It only ever got the one season, like I said, rather than the planned 5 outlined by Morgan and Wong, and it's unfortunate because of all the failed series to be born in the wake of The Next Generation. It remains the one I wish had gotten more time to tell its story. Space Above and Beyond has been on my mind as I've joined in on the fight to protect managed democracy with Helldivers 2 recently, but believe it or not, it isn't necessarily as inspired by Starship Troopers as Helldivers is, as its creators looked instead to Joe Haldeman's The Forever War. In a tragic sign of the times, Above and Beyond is not available to stream anywhere officially, and it costs an arm and a leg to acquire on DVD. But somehow there's this guy on YouTube named Owen Davies who's made it his personal mission to upload 4K high-definition AI-processed versions of not only this entire series, but a multitude of other lost content, that is otherwise not a priority for any company or rights holder to bring to the fore. But even like video game cutscenes, so you can see like Mark Hamill in Wing Commander and all of his glory. This guy is officially a saint, and I can't thank him enough for going through all the efforts he's done, because otherwise I would not have been able to revisit this show, enough to recall why I appreciated it so much. And to wrap it all up, I'm going a little weird. This is one that I kind of struggle to, I guess, describe competently, because to begin with, it's a bizarre little faded memory that I had from channel surfing late at night at my grandparents' house and catching reruns of it on Sci-Fi. And this is just a gonzo, weird, low-budget, horny little show, and it has so many qualities that make it memorable. Created by Paul Donovan, Lexx Gigeroff, and Jeffrey Hirschfield, Lexx has more in common with the works of Terry Gilliam and Luc Besson than Gene Roddenberry. Described by its creators as the evil twin of Star Trek, that honestly is the best description available. Lexx follows the titular living ship and its kinky crew of resurrected outcasts as they resist a galaxy-spanning interdimensional dystopia. But it's not all grim darkness, as each episode endeavors to find the fun factor behind all the misery. But it never dips as far into comedy as another cult classic like Red Dwarf does. Lexx was a show that was filled with TNA and general surreal imagery, and even after all these years, it still titillates and transfixes in equal measure. I defy anyone to coherently explain what's going on here, but if you're looking for something to throw on after downing a heroic dose of edibles, this is the one. You can find it on Prime Video, the Roku channel, a bunch of other places, and let me tell you, it's well worth your time, especially in this day and age where science fiction television especially lacks imagination. The running theme between all three of these series is just how the ambitions of creatives and the production teams who make it all real, even though they overcome their often limited and constrained technology, and they still give you something worthwhile. All of their efforts, at the time, was unfortunately undone by the vagaries of network and cable television, but fortunately there are some means available to us to come back to them and appreciate the ingenuity and creativity that went into it. I apologize for not really having, a lot more substance behind what I had to say, but mostly I just want to point people in the direction of other wild and weird things that are out there, and things that are, I believe, well worth your time. And yeah, thank you for watching, and we'll see you all coming up here next week when Matt and I will review the latest film from A24, Love Lies Bleeding. Thank you very much.